Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. You're watching In Deep on the Delta. This is the weekly fishing report for the week of, when is it? August 25th. I think it's August 25th. I'm going to check. I got to check. It is August 25th. We're going to do a quick report this week. I know you guys would rather be out there fishing than listening to me. There are changing conditions. We've got a better report for you than last week, but there's some interesting things going on. So let's get into it, and we'll start off with the river conditions out here. They're pretty much same old, same old. The water temperatures have dropped a little bit. I was out this morning at about 8 and the water temperature was 73. I'm sure it's going to get up to about 76, 78. I have been fishing out north, out by the Sacramento River. The water temperatures out there are a couple degrees cooler, so you might want to take that into consideration. But all over the Delta, water temperatures are conducive to catching a lot of bass. The one thing that has changed out here this week is with the wave action and maybe some of the wind action, clarities are changing through the Delta. You can go from anywhere 5 to 6 feet of visibility to 2 feet of visibility, and that 2 feet of visibility is probably due to boat traffic, and that was a key for one day out here, and I'm going to talk about that fishing some of the mud lines. I'll talk about that later in the program when I get down to what I was doing this week. I want to give a shout out to Hunter and Guy. They were out Sunday fishing the big high school team tournament. They ended up with 14.9 pounds, and that was good enough for second place. It took 15 and some change to win, but the conditions were extremely difficult, and right now that 14.9, 15 pounds, that's not a bad bag. So congratulations to you guys. We're going to talk a little bit more about that tournament coming up, and I'm going to talk about the BBT tournament that came up on Saturday, and I think those two tournaments are kind of a good mirror into what's been going on with everybody out here. And I'll give you some weights and stuff in just a minute. So conditions are fine. We're going to have some hot weather coming up, and I'm hoping that that's going to help the bite. Now, unfortunately, last week, one of the things that helped the bite was having some good tidal coefficients that we had last week, and that did help the bite. This week, our tides are going to be just average tides, but we're going to have a little bit of a heat wave come in, and I'm hoping that that's going to maybe kick the bite up, and I'll talk about some of the things that you might want to be looking at when you come out here fishing this weekend when the temperature starts to rise. So let's start off with stripers, and I'm getting reports from both shops, Hook, Line, and Sinker and Outdoor Sportsman, that there's been a big increase in people catching stripers. Now, they're talking about mostly largemouth bass fishermen going out and catching incidental striped bass in their fishing, especially Hook, Line, and Sinker. The guys that are going out towards the Sacramento, they're getting a lot more stripers, and they're getting a good class of fish. So the guys that are out trolling, looking for stripers, they're still catching fish, but a lot more fish must be coming into the system because the guys that are fishing largemouth bass are getting them on crankbaits and topwater baits and, you know, oddball things that we throw out there that we generally incidentally catch the bass. So they're coming in, and as soon as I start to get reports on what's going on with that, we'll talk more about the stripers. But there are more fish coming into the system, and there's been some fish in the 15 to 20 pound class reported, so there's some good fish out there too. That's the striper report. Let's get into the largemouth bass report, and I want to start off by talking about the BBT tournament that was out here Saturday out of Russo's, and it really is an indication of what everyone's been doing out here, because I can talk about half of the field and you would think they were doing really good, and then the other half of the field was really struggling. So let's look at some weights here. There was 108 teams. There were 4 bags weighed in over 20 pounds. It took 21 pounds 6 to win it. There was 5 fish over 6 pounds, there were 3 fish over 7 pounds, and there were 3 fish over 8 pounds with an 8-2 to win big fish at the tournament. That sounds great. Here's the tougher part of the tournament. 13.4 cash to check. That's not good on the Delta when out of 108 boats, 13 pounds cashes a check. The other thing that's a little concerning is right around 54, right in the middle, That was 9 pounds 6 ounces. That was right in the middle of the pack. And the really disturbing thing was that 48 boats did not weigh in. So that's telling you that almost half the field had a pretty tough day. And that's what the situation has been here on the Delta. You make a right turn or you make a wrong turn, and that can be your day. I listened to Randy interview a lot of the people that came in, and how they were catching fish was all over the board. There's not one particular technique that is pulling all the fish in. Some guys caught them punching, some guys caught them drop shot, some guys caught them on spinner baits, crank baits, chatter baits were a big deal, worms, flipping, everything you could think of. So it's just being in the right place at the right time with the right bait. So you have to be, you can't pigeonhole yourself right now. You've got to keep moving, and you've got to continue to try different things until you find something that works for you. And let me put up another picture, and I want to show off this picture of Brian. He got a nice big fish out here. He says it was about 8 pounds, and I wanted to congratulate Brian on that. And I'm sure Brian's just an average guy that was out fishing an average day, and he caught, maybe the fish of a lifetime for some guys. That's the Delta. You can come out here and not have a very good day, but catch the fish of a lifetime. Anyhow, so we'll not only talk about the BBT. They were out here Saturday. Sunday, 54 boat high school team tournament that I was talking about. They were also out of Russo's, and they reported some very tough fishing conditions and very tough fishing. Like I said, 15 pounds won, 14.9 was second, and I'd like to congratulate all the kids that fished that, because they not only were fishing under tough conditions, but they were fishing behind a 108 boat tournament the day before. So it's kind of almost like fishing, the second day of a 2-day tournament. And we all know what those have looked like this year on the Delta. It's been a lot tougher on that second day than it has the first day. So anyhow, that's kind of an insight of what has been going on the Delta. Now I want to talk about what I've been doing, and one of the patterns that I have found out here. It's been just so catching fish across the board, but really having to grind, catching fish across the board on everything from punching to chatterbaits, everything that I mentioned before. But it's been a bit of a grind. Now, let me tell you, I went out Monday night. You guys know I like to night fish out here. We had a full moon this weekend. I got out Monday night for an all-nighter. The evening bite was just fair. Caught a couple of fish. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to put out, I'll put another Delta night. That's going to be what I call one of the videos that I come up in the next week or so. And you'll be able to see exactly what I did Monday evening, staying out all night. And I'll tell you right now, the height of the whole video will be a big loss that I had. Again, that's getting old. I hate to admit it, but if you want to see me losing a big fish, you got to check out another Delta night. So the evening bite was okay. As soon as the sun went down, I was expecting full moonlight, 100%. It was a full moon, and it just never got light. And I finally saw the moon, and I didn't factor in that because of the smoke, the moonlight was going to be coming through like it was coming through a tinted window. Never got light. Wasn't doing very well. It was cold. I knew I was expecting 55 to 60 degree weather because they said it was going to be cold. I think it was more 50 to 55 degree. It got damp and dewy and nasty. I went to bed about 10 o'clock. I knew there was going to be a good tide in the morning. About 4, got up at 4. The wind had died down. The moon was out. Everything was perfect, and I fished like a dog. And it was very tough. I believe my tough fishing was because of the weather front that came in. It should have been, 65, maybe even 70 degrees in the evening. The daytime ended up about 80, and the night dropped to about 50 to 55. So I'm calling it a weather front that screwed up my fishing. But for you guys that have been out there fishing the evenings, let me know how you're doing if you're out there, because man, it really fouled me up. But during the day, I've been out and I've been doing pretty well. It's a little bit of a grind. Have been having to fish pretty hard to catch my fish, but out the other day I was with a partner that hadn't been out in a while, and after our day of fishing he wasn't going to get out for a while. He's got a shoulder problem. He's going to have a surgery, so he can't do a lot of punching and you know, striking type things. So we went out, and after about a half a day we had caught a few fish, but it had been really tough. But I was feeling like I wanted my partner to catch a few fish because he wasn't going to get out for a while, and we planned on fishing a half a day, and we ended up extending out to maybe a 3/4 day. Here is the moral of the story. If we had stopped at the half a day, we would have had a very difficult day. But because we were, I won't even say patient, I would say more bullheaded and just stubborn, we kept fishing, and this is what we found. Because of either the boat traffic or the wave traffic, we started seeing some mud lines on the delta, and just for the heck of it decided, let's fish this. They were rock banks with a mud line out to the submerged vegetation, probably 15 feet offshore. Now, the reason I decided to do that was because I figured we could make no mistakes. We fished all morning and the fishing wasn't great. Even a bad decision wasn't a bad decision. If we didn't catch any fish, it was just like the morning. It wasn't a bad decision. We just eliminated water, whatever. So for those of you guys who watch my video, Burning Banks, this is exactly what we did. Found stained water, muddy water. There was a absolute mud line, and then right on the outside of the submerged vegetation, there was clear water. And that's where the fish were holding. Now the reason that happened, here's another thing I want to talk about. I've been telling you that all of our fish were coming at the top of the tide and the outgoing tide. We'd fished the perfect tide and not had a lot of bites. This was at low tide, the worst possible time we could have fished. We got on the trolling motor, we started burning those banks. Chris was throwing a chatterbait and he picked up a couple of bites. One of them was a small fish, one of them was a pretty decent fish, and then I think he got another blow up, and I said, Chris, we got to go back over that and we got to see if there's fish down on that mud line, which we did, and I started drop shotting and throwing chatterbaits, and that was the key. We started catching fish. Now Chris kept throwing the chatterbait, and he continued to catch fish, but we were finding that the real aggressive fish were maybe 1 out of 7 or 8, so they were the ones coming up bumping the buzz baits. If I said chatterbaits before, I was lying. We were throwing buzz baits on the top of the water. So we started throwing drop shot and chatterbait on the edge of the mud line, just on the outside of that submerged weed line that we usually have here on the delta, and that's what caught the fish for us. So if you guys find stained water, especially a mud line, make sure you fish that, and you can throw top waters over the top of it. Make sure you get the top waters right up against the bank and pull them, you know, through the small trough and over the submerged vegetation, because that's where they were hitting the buzz baits, either as it came right into the vegetation or just as it was leaving the vegetation. That might be a key for you guys to catch some fish this weekend, especially if there's heat, because if we have that stained water, it acts as a little bit of a sunscreen for the fish. And you know, especially at low tide, if you've got some of the mats that normally don't mat up at high tide, you've got those same mats that at low tide they mat up, and they also create some shade. So think about that when you're fishing, and think about being persistent. Still the top baits, I would say, especially this weekend when we get 100-degree weather and that hot weather, look for shade. Fish docks, fish hyacinth, and you might want to do a little punching, but really look for shade. Even if you're fishing offshore vegetation, fish on the shady side of the vegetation. If you're throwing T-rigs or creature baits, or you know, beavers, things like that, look for shade. Look for a little deeper water at low tide, but just be persistent and get out there, and just by being persistent, it may change your day. What else can I talk about? I think that's going to be about it. Yeah, so I hope you guys are able to get out. The fishing is decent. You're going to catch some fish, and the bigger fish are coming out. I think we got a couple of fish right around 5 pounds when we were fooling around with the buzz baits. We took, my partner Chris got one of the big fish on a buzz bait, and I took one on a chatterbait. So you know, doesn't matter what you're throwing. A lot of the punch fish that I've been getting lately have not been big fish, and that's one of the reasons I haven't been punching a whole lot, because if I'm not catching big fish, I'd rather catch the small and medium-sized fish doing other techniques than the punching. But anyhow, with that, thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and we will see you guys out on the water, and see you guys next week.